Welcome to the Functioning Griefster, a podcast about grief, love, and the legacy those we've lost still leave behind. I'm Alexandra Spencer, a sports and holistic therapist and a grieving mom to my son Declan, my best friend, my sunshine, my soulmate. Each week I sit down in the back of Dec's van with someone from the club no one ever wants to join. We cry, we laugh, we swear, and we honour their stories, uncovering the powerful bonds that even death just cannot break. There's no script, no rules, just honesty, heart, and a lot of courage. This podcast is part of my one-woman mission to challenge the taboo around grief, especially when someone dies too soon. I don't believe their name should be buried with them. Their voices still echo through us. So if you've ever felt like you were thrown into a cold, dark ocean with no rescue ring in sight, this is the place for you. So grab your life jacket, you're not alone. So hi, my name's Alex. Welcome to the Functioning Griefster Podcast. Today I'm here with RJ's Foundation founder and mother, Naomi.
Hiya,
welcome.
Okay? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, unfortunately, we have in common that we've lost our sons, and I would love to know more about Jamie, your son.
Well, you should know the first thing is I absolutely love talking about Jamie.
Good, my favourite subject's my son, so
yeah. And people say to me all the time, well, I don't know, you've probably found the same, people avoid talking to me about Jamie, whereas I would much prefer that every second word was Jamie or Jay or whatever people want to call him. So yeah, I'm really glad that we could have this chat.
Yeah. So tell me, what's Jamie into? I know that there's a few similarities.
We have,
between
it sounds like our
Dex,
boys have quite a lot in
discovered.
common. Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that jumps out at me, the petrol head thing.
Yeah.
So Jamie was very young in passing his driving test. Well, I say young, he was 17, but so first of all, I class myself as one of the luckiest people alive that COVID happened, which sounds really weird.
No, I get that because I loved spending time with Deck, and we were
was
forced to spend 24/7.
That was it, exactly. And we lived in a village when COVID happened, but it meant that from when Jamie was 16 to when he was just over 18, there was just me and him at home. My husband worked on the railway, so he had to stay away from us for a lot of the time because I'm asthmatic, so it meant that I couldn't have. And Jamie chose to be at home in the bubble with me, and we just spent 2 years, me teaching him to drive. We would go out in the car together, and because we lived in a village, which was a little bit naughty, but we could sneakily go down the lane.
What car was it?
So I used to take him out in my little RCZ, which was like a little Peugeot sporty car, totally not the car you would normally learn to drive in. So then that meant that Jamie had already had quite a few lessons, so when they lifted the lockdown, we literally booked him in with a driving instructor. And even though my other son Callum had been learning to drive for like 4 years, they put Jamie in for his test in the June, so it was sort of 6 months after his 17th birthday, and he passed first time, which was just crazy. And for his 17th birthday, we bought him a little Fiesta. So he always wanted to drive. He was obsessed with driving. He was obsessed with cars. He'd buy like magazines just about body kits and and because I had my little RCZ, he would, I was kind of the mum that had the little sports car, even though it was just a midlife crisis for me. To him, it was quite exciting. He passed his driving test, and because we lived in a village, which was like 12 miles away from his mates, it just gave him that bit of freedom. And then literally the month before Jamie collapsed, we'd got rid of his Fiesta and he bought himself a little Corsa. Well, we'd bought him a little Corsa.
Go on, was it a sporty one?
No, not really, but Jamie was obsessed with the colour black, so everything had to be black. He was always in black clothes. His Fiesta was black, and then we found this Corsa which was in Nottingham, and it was black and it had very little miles on it, and he was very sensible with that. It wasn't like, because he had to have a black box because of the insurance, obviously. But he was really sensible. He didn't want to go fast. I was always a bit conscious about him taking his mates in the car because you worry that someone's going to distract.
Yeah,
I was just that typical panicky mom.
No, that's just natural.
But I suppose, like, when you hear later on sort of what happened when Jamie collapsed, the car thing was a big thing because I was always such a panic about he was driving country lanes to go and visit his friends, and he would ferry his friends everywhere. Although I have to tell you a little story about Jamie was really tight, so money wise he would, because he had 3 jobs and he went to college and he was a grafter, and what he earned he would like to buy himself nice things. He loved nice clothes, and his animals, he would spoil his animals. He had a little bearded dragon called Luther.
No way, we used to have a bearded dragon called Portia.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So Luther was Jamie's bearded dragon, and he plagued me for years to have him. And my husband is absolutely got a massive phobia with reptiles, so the answer was always no. But literally 2 years before we lost Jamie, we caved and let him have Luther. And then he's got a little dog, but he would always say, I'm just popping to Pets at Home to get Castro a toy, or I've got to go and get some mealworms for the blooming dragon. And so everything was it gave him the freedom. But with his tightness, I remember having a conversation with him where he said, I'm just going to pick so and so up and take them to college, or I'm going to drop them off after college. And I said, you should say to your mates, look, if you want a lift, that's absolutely fine, but it's going to cost you £1 no matter where we're going, especially if I'm going there anyway. It's going to cost you £1. Anyway, one of his friends, Nathan, that's the house that Jamie was at the night that he collapsed, and his mum said to me it was always a bit of a standing joke because Jamie would bring Nathan home from college and Nathan would come running in the house, Mum, have you got £1? Because Jamie won't go until I've paid for my petrol. And when we looked in Jamie's car the night that when we went to pick it up after we'd lost him, I found a little Wrigley's extra pot just full of pound coins because he'd literally charged his mates £1 for every journey. So that I've still got his car, and the pound coins are still in his car because I thought if I move them, he will literally haunt me to make sure that I get them put back. So the petrol head thing, and then the other. It's almost a bit of a strange one, but for Jamie's 18th birthday we bought him a driving experience. So it was miles away, and we were booked in to go on this driving experience on the 7th of December 2021, and it was when we had that really bad gale force winds, and they rang me in the morning. They said, we're going to have to cancel the experience, but Jamie's birthday was 25th of November, so I was gutted because he was so excited, and it was something he was doing it with Callum. So whenever he was doing anything with his brother, it was always a big thing. So she said, oh, don't worry, we can do it after Christmas or after New Year. And I was like, no, I want to do it before Christmas, because because he was the 25th of November, people used to get him things and go, oh, that's for Christmas and birthday. And I was always like, no, that's not fair.
I'm a November birthday too.
Yeah, so you know the feeling. So I said, no, I want to do it before then. She goes, well, I'll book you in for the 12th, but the weather probably won't be any good, so it might have to be cancelled again. Anyway, we got to the 12th and she's like, oh no, it's going ahead. So we took Jamie. He got to drive a Nissan GT, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini. Like, he drove all these different cars, and you can imagine I was absolutely petrified watching him driving around this racetrack. I mean, Callum is the speed, he loves speed. Callum's Jamie's brother, but whereas Jamie would just potter around like a little old man in the Ferrari, like he'd just pull up really slow, do a perfect park, whereas Callum's like really fast. But obviously, because we lost Jamie so early in January, it always sort of hit home with us that we wouldn't have had those memories had I have not insisted that we did it when we did. So I felt like something had told me to make sure he did that. So the petrol head thing is a big thing. He car mad, absolutely car mad. And then really quirky things. So Jamie was a really quirky lad, like I said, with Luther, his bearded dragon, and people automatically think that he was a little bit goth, and he wasn't. Even though he was always dressed in black, it was like Adidas hoodie, Adidas jogging bottoms, Adidas trainers, and we would go shopping and we'd be out for like 4 or 5 hours. We'd go in every sports shop you can imagine, and he would still buy a black hoodie, black jogging bottoms, black trainers. It was so it was almost like, what a waste of a shopping trip. That was just him. He knew his style, and that's what he liked to. And then Jamie was training to be a plumber, and really geekily, he had this passion about it. Like, he did 6 months work experience with my brother. He would go along with him just once a week or 2 afternoons a week. And Jamie used to say him and his friends, Nathan and Josh, they were going to have their own little business. And Jamie didn't want a huge empire. He used to say to me that he just wanted to go around the villages and fix little old ladies' toilets. That's what he wanted to do. And my brother-in-law Terry, he was teaching him to talk to people because Jamie was so shy, like really in himself, like very, very shy. And my brother-in-law was teaching him, and he used to leave him downstairs talking to all the old women while he'd go off and do the bathroom so that Jamie would learn. And he really picked it up, and he got so much better at it. And he just used to say, I just want to go and fix little old ladies' toilets and just be helpful.
Which I suppose as his mum must have been such a lovely thing to hear. Brought up such a kind...
he was so respectful. And that's the one thing Terry, my brother, would say, is that he was so polite. And Terry used to say, there's a £5 there for Jamie, and I'd go, what's that for? You've already given him his wages for today or whatever. He'd go, no, so and so at that bathroom we went to do left it as a tip because they said he was so lovely and polite. And that was always lovely for me, because I think you'll agree, like the main thing you want with your children is as long as they're always polite to people.
Definitely.
And everybody just loved Jamie. He was so addictive. You'd get addicted to just listening to him and talking to him. And with his plumbing and his cars, and he was animal obsessed, like to the point where, like,
another similarity.
But it could be any animal. He wasn't bothered. It wasn't like he would watch, he loved anything like Blue Planet or anything like that he would watch on telly. He was an absolute space geek. So he was.
That's why over just to your right, Dec was going to have that tattoo, an astronaut in a wheelchair, and this van is kind of the space colours, and under the bonnet it's all space themed.
Wow, that's really crazy, because Jamie was a space geek, so he would call himself a space geek, because it wasn't to the point where it was cool. He would literally come into me at night, like he'd have been playing his computer and everything in the evening, not say a word to me. As soon as I turned my light off to go to sleep at about 11 o'clock at night, he'd come in, Mum, I've just found this, I can see Jupiter on my phone. Then he'd go, did you know what gas it is on this planet? And I'd be like, mate, it's 11 o'clock at night. But he would just lay across the end of my bed, or Jem would be on afternoons, and he'd come in, he'd do 2 till 10 and come in, and he'd come up to bed, and Jamie would just be laying on the bed, and neither of us would ever say, mate, it's too late. He would talk and talk and talk, and it's almost like he just had so much in his little head.
They sound so similar. They really do sound so similar. And Dec would even say, do you get bored of my weird facts?
Oh yeah, Jamie did as well. Like, I'm really sorry to come in so late, and I know you're going to say it's boring, but we just I could listen to him forever. And one of the things I miss so much now is like his little geeky facts, and we do lots of pub quizzes for Jamie's charity, and I always think Jamie would know that. Like, Jamie would, because he was a Star Wars geek. Again, he called himself a Star Wars geek. And we went and watched a Star Wars film at the cinema after we lost Jamie, because I'd never been to the cinema to watch one. He always used to go with his dad to watch Star Wars, because his dad liked Star Wars as well. So I made myself go and watch one, and I'd completely fell asleep by the end of it and absolutely hated it, but I could always say that I'd at least been to see one for him. The space thing he had the telescope, and he would look up at stars, and we quite often say now that he's in the stars, and that we have, I'm sure everybody sees the bright star and they go, that's my Jamie, or that's my Dec, or whatever, and we see this huge star wherever we go, and I always just think, he's, and with Jamie's defibrillator cabinets, they light up at night, so we say that's Jamie shining bright, the same as the stars, and it all kind of links in,
which is nice. And I know for me, before it became a thing, we used to always say I love you to the moon and back.
So my sister used to actually text that to Jamie, and that's a thing that she puts on like all her social media posts now. She's got like a Jamie wall in her house, which is all pictures of him, and she had a star named after him, and we know which star it is on the like measurements and all of that, and that she always used love you to the moon and back. So it's a lovely thing to kind of remember. She always hashtags it, and which is sweet. But he had such a diverse, his life was full of loves of so many diverse things. It was never just like music was a huge thing for Jamie. but people would go, oh, well, who did he like? And his favourite was the Killers, because I'm a massive Killers fan.
Yeah.
So he would listen to that with me. But you'd get in his car one day and it would be the Killers. And then the next day he'd get in his car and it would be Ellie Goulding. And then it would be Elton John. And then it would be KSI. So it was that extreme.
Don't like KSI.
No, well, to be honest, it wasn't my type of music, but he would listen to literally anything. Yeah. And sometimes I'd get in his car and I'd go, what on earth is this? And then the next day he'd have one of my playlists on, and sometimes he'd get in my car, but he would never tell me to turn my music off. He would listen to any music. So a lot of what we do with Jamie's charity now, like we have Jamie's Music Festival in June every year.
Oh, lovely. I'll have to come this year.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all based around music and his love of music. And we're supported by all our local bands that they just knew that we've got a ball tomorrow night, actually, the Mayor's Charity Ball, where we've got a Killers tribute act that are the Killers, Zed. Yeah. And they're performing for Jamie. Because Jamie's song is a Killer song as well. So yeah, music played a huge part. You'd never see him without an AirPod in. He'd always got one AirPod in. But you can imagine, obviously, the night he collapsed, I'd got his AirPod, and because he'd still got his AirPod in, even though he was at his friend's house and they'd got Alexa playing music, Jamie still had an AirPod in.
So can you tell me about that night? What actually happened?
So I wasn't here. I wasn't in the country. It was New Year's Eve was mine and my husband's 10-year wedding anniversary. So we'd flown to Canada on the Thursday, and it was a big thing that we were overlooking Niagara Falls on our 10th wedding anniversary, which has obviously now become a huge irrelevance, and we don't celebrate that. Yeah. But Jamie was at home, just him and the dog, Castro. Callum had gone to London for New Year. He was doing the fireworks in London. Him and his girlfriend had gone to London, and I'd spoke to Jamie in the day on New Year's Eve. Jamie had been to work in the morning. He worked with his brother and his dad on that day, and he came home and he sent me a video message of the dog and said, you know, look at this little moron. And Castro was there like running about in the video, and that's I've still got that video because that was the last time I heard Jamie's voice. And then I'd spoken to him on the phone, and he'd said, I'm not sure what's happening tonight. I don't know whether the lads are coming over here, because we lived obviously in a village, and they were going to go over. He said, or I might go over to rugby. I said, well, either way, just be really careful, you know, if you're driving or whatever. I said, where are you going to go? He said, I'll probably go to Nathan's. And I knew Nathan and Nathan's mum and dad and that, and it didn't even enter my head. I wasn't worried, or I was just like, oh, you know, have a good time. And at about 5 o'clock English time, I'd got a message on my phone from Domino's. Thank you for your order. So Jamie always used to order buy one get one free on pizzas. He was pizza mad, loved pizza.
What's his favourite topping?
So he would just literally have a margharita pizza, but he was very much like me. It had to be really hot. He wouldn't eat lukewarm pizza. He had to heat it up in the microwave. So
Dexter's pepperoni.
Oh, yeah, that's Callum. Yeah,
from Domino's.
Yeah. Oh, Domino's mad. Yeah. I'll tell you a little bit more about that after. But so I'd got this message through, and I was like, oh, you've got yourself a pizza? And he says, yeah, I'm going to have one before I go out, and then I'll have one when I get home. So I was like, okay. And Jamie could eat a lot of pizza. Yeah. Like, he wasn't a big lad, but he could put pizza away. So anyway, it got to about 9 o'clock Canada time. So I guess here that would be about 8:30. So it would have been about 1:30 in the morning. And I'd messaged him at midnight and said, Happy New Year, love you. And he'd messaged me back, Happy New Year, love you, blue heart. He always put a blue heart on everything, hence the blue heart. And then about 2 o'clock in the morning English time, so about 9 o'clock Canada time, we decided that we were going to go out later to celebrate the new year and our anniversary and everything. So we were just getting ready in the room, and I messaged Jamie and said, are you okay? Do you know what time you're going home or anything? And it hadn't delivered or anything, so it was just like pending. Yeah. So I thought, oh, that's a little bit strange, but I knew he was at Nathan, so I thought, everything's fine. And then at about 3 o'clock a.m. English time, my phone went in Canada, and it was Jamie's dad. So I thought, well, that's a little bit strange. What's he ringing for? So I answered the phone. Oh, hiya, you okay? And he said, where are you? And I said, oh, well, we're in Canada. Why? And he's like, oh, shit. You know, excuse my French, but... And I was like, why? And I could hear like his voice had sort of broken. And I said, what's happened to Callum? Because straight away in my head I thought Callum was going to London. So I thought, and I knew that Callum was in London, so straight away I was thinking, oh my goodness, something horrific's happened on the motorway. And he said, no, it's not Callum, it's Jamie. And I said, has he crashed his car? Because straight away I just thought he must have been driving back from Nathan's and he'd crashed his car. And he said, no, he's had a heart attack. And I was just, everything just, it's all...
It's okay, take your time.
It's all such a blur. And I said, what do you mean he's had a heart attack? And I just remembered, because I was sitting on the edge of the bed and I just stood up and he said, he's collapsed at Nathan's house. I don't know what's happened. I'm just on the way to the hospital. So my husband Jem was saying, what's the matter? What's happened? What's happened? And I just shouted and said that Jamie's had a heart attack. And I shouted to Jem, phone my mum, get us a flight, we need a flight, we've got to get on a flight back. And then the phone went dead. And you can imagine I was just like watching it thinking, and I think I actually did pinch myself because I thought it's just another nightmare. It's nothing, this is going to be nothing. And then the phone rang again. And it was Gavin again. And he said, well, I'm at the hospital and the consultant needs to speak to you. And this was the consultant in the A&E department. So this man came on the phone and I said, is he still alive? He has to be alive. And he said, yes, he's still alive. Don't panic. But I don't think Jamie's had a heart attack. We think he's suffered a cardiac arrest. And so I was doing the normal mum thing. What do you mean?
What's the difference for a start?
What's caused that? Like, you know. And then he said, you need to get back. You need to get home. And I said, well, nothing bad's going to happen, is it? And he said, no, honestly, you just need to get back. You know, it's better if you're here because then we can make decisions. And Jamie's heart is beating again. And I knew very little at that point, but I knew that I had to get back as quickly as I could. So obviously you can imagine by this time it was about 11 o'clock Canada time, so it hadn't even crossed midnight at that point. So we went down, we managed to somehow throw everything in a suitcase, went downstairs, told them we needed a taxi urgently. Obviously you can imagine trying to get a taxi at 11 o'clock on New Year's Eve. We basically checked out of the hotel. We'd only been there 2 days, but we explained, and my husband sort of explained to the hotel our son's had a heart attack, and we managed to get in a taxi, and that sort of brought us obviously back to the airport. And then we got to the airport at about midnight, and then we just stood there because we were like, there's no desks open, there's no flights, it's New Year's Eve, where are we going to go, what are we going to do? And the whole time I was on the phone by this point my mum had got to the hospital as well, but I just stayed on the phone, and she was saying, I'm going to try and get in to see Jamie, and his dad had gone in to see him. Somebody had rang Callum, and Callum was on the way back from London, goodness knows how. We won't even talk about who was driving and what state they were in. Or I'd rang my sister, so I've got 3 sisters, and one of my sisters is very close to me and was very close to Jamie. And she'd been at a New Year's Eve party. She was on her way to rugby from Crewe, and everybody was like swarming to go to the hospital because we knew how serious it was. Jamie's granddad had gone there, and I just sat there in the airport, like my phone was running out of charge. I was trying to talk to lots of people. I was desperately trying to find a flight for like first thing the next morning because I knew we'd got nothing all night. My mum was trying to get a flight, and then my husband managed to get on British Airways, and something came up where it said he had to email to confirm tickets. So he did, and sent an email saying, emergency through our insurance, we need to get tickets back, we've got to fly back, our son has suffered a heart attack. And then we got a phone call from we got a phone call from who we were told was British Airways, And we spoke to this gentleman and he said, oh yeah, you just need to pay for this flight and we can get you on it tomorrow morning, we can get you back to the UK, no problem. So we paid £1,700 there and then, and I paid for it on the phone and booked the flight. And as we put the phone down, my phone rang and it was British Airways, and we'd been scammed by a company who had intercepted Gem's emails, and we basically paid £1,700 for flights that didn't exist. But you can imagine at the time I was like, I don't care. By this point, British Airways were on the phone saying, we think you've been scammed, there are no tickets. But she said, we'll try and help you as best we can. So anyway, long story short, I stayed on the phone literally the whole night and all morning, and they got us on a flight the next day at 5. And we went, then we got to the desk to check in for our flight, and Canadian airport, whatever it was, wouldn't accept our COVID tests. So they said we couldn't go through because the COVID tests that we've been told to take with us and done at the airport, they wouldn't accept them.
So what year was this?
So this was January the 1st, 2022. So coming out the back of COVID, but the Canadian restrictions were still in place, so we had to have COVID tests. But as luck would have it, the consultants who were dealing with the issues here and looking after Jamie, they got in touch with the airport and said, you let these people get on a flight, they need to come back. And I think at that point in the back of my mind I thought, this is going to be something really bad is happening here, because there's no way that they would do that if it wasn't something bad. But everyone was saying to me, he's going to be fine. My mum had said they've put him on life support as a precaution to make sure so his heart doesn't stop again, even though it hadn't stopped at all again after they brought him back. But Jamie's dad was saying to me, you need to prepare yourself because it's bad. Now, Jamie's dad is very to the point, like he'd much rather be honest than, and everybody else was saying to me, he's going to be fine, he's going to be fine. And then I spoke to Lisa, who is a nurse at the cardiothoracic intensive care unit at Coventry Hospital. And I said, I just need you to be honest with me. Is he okay? And she said, he's alive and he's on life support. But you need to get back here with him. And she said, until you are back with him, I am his mom, and I won't leave him until you're with him.
So listen, Naomi, after having that phone call in that hotel room in Canada, how long did you have to wait until you were by his side?
Well, I got the phone call at about 10 o'clock at night, and then we was back with Jamie at 8 o'clock, not the Sunday morning, the Monday morning. So
I can't even imagine how horrendous it must have been.
I think, I went into shock.
Yeah.
And my whole body just shook the whole time. I couldn't even function. My husband was just trying, and it's created this huge phobia about airports now. I can't stand airports, and the thought of being there and seeing all those desks but when we got back to Heathrow, I mean, British Airways were amazing to us, and they flew us back business class so that Jem could sleep, because he'd got to drive from London to Coventry when we got back. And the air stewardess who sat with me for the whole flight, we just looked through photographs of Jamie. I'm still in touch with Siobhan, she was amazing.
That's lovely.
And they moved our gate for our flight to gate number 1 so that we could literally walk off the plane and get in the van. They were amazing.
Well done, British Airways.
Yeah, they were. And then we got in the car and we drove up to Coventry, and we got to Jamie, and I remember walking into the intensive care unit, and Lisa, the nurse that I'd spoken to, was still there, like she promised she was going to be. And I just remember dropping my bag, and I just got on the bed next to Jamie, and he'd got like all his tubes and everything, and I just whispered to him, like, what on earth are you doing, what's gone on, what's happened, and I could see he was really warm, and he'd got his colour in his cheeks, and his eyes were closed, and the consultants all came to see us straight away, and they just said that they were doing their best, and that Jamie had a very slim chance of survival, but that they were going to do everything they could. And I remember saying to them, losing him is not an option, so no matter what you have to do, you just keep doing it. And by this point we knew it was a cardiac arrest and not a heart attack, even though nobody could tell me why, and I kept saying why, what's caused it. And I can't even remember the doctor's faces. All I can remember is Lisa, the nurse, and all the other nurses. We call them Jamie's angels now because they just took care of him. And then we all just took it in turns to sleep with him, lay on the bed with him, sit by his bed. Everybody came in to see him. And then on the Tuesday, they told us in the afternoon that we needed to go for a meeting. And on the Monday, I'd seen Jamie's finger move. And my sister had seen it as well. I remember they were wheeling his bed out to go for a scan, and I saw his finger move. And my sister looked at me, she went, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it just moved." And then on the Tuesday afternoon, they called us into a meeting in a room and just said that they'd done another scan and that they felt that Jamie didn't have any brain function anymore. And I just said that was impossible because he was 18. And they showed us all the scans, and they showed us his brain scan from when they'd brought him in on the Saturday, and then they showed us his brain scan on the Tuesday. And I said, how could that possibly happen? And they just said because Jamie had waited so long for defibrillation to start his heart that his brain had been starved of oxygen. But that they weren't going to be able to save him. I said I wasn't willing to turn his machine off. So they said what they would do is they would wait and they would try taking him off sedation to see if he managed, which I think they knew he wasn't going to manage. But then we went back to the ward, or back to intensive care, and as we were walking back, there was a group of people standing at Jamie's bed, and one of them, the name was Mike, and he said, "My name's Mike, I'm from the organ donation team." Now, I knew that Jamie had signed the organ donation register. We'd watched a film called 5 Feet Apart, which is about young people with cystic fibrosis. And me and Jamie had sat and watched that film in lockdown and cried our eyes out to it. But Jamie had said to me then, if I wasn't here, I would want to help somebody. So he signed the register, but what we didn't know was that Jamie had actually signed that register when he was 16, when he was 17, and again when he was 18.
So he really meant it,
meant it, yeah. And on Jamie's bed there was his car keys and his wallet and all the teddies that we'd all brought him. But then, sure enough, in his wallet there was his organ donor card. So the conversation started, and they showed us all the information that Jamie had signed and what his intentions were. And
that must have been an incredibly hard discussion.
It was horrific, but more so because Jamie's dad didn't know that he was a donor. So the first thing you think is, no, you're not taking him apart. That's it. Yeah. You don't think of anything else.
Yeah,
but then you think, as his mum, I knew he was so determined that that's what he wanted to do. But obviously Gavin was not so much like, no, I don't want to do it, because he didn't know what Jamie's views were. And the organ donation team were amazing, and we talked through everything. And Gavin, obviously, on talking to me and realising why Jamie had signed it and the conversations we'd had, he said, well, of course then, if that's what he wanted. We decided not to donate Jamie's eyes. We didn't want his anything touching with his eyes, because he was so known for having these beautiful brown eyes, and we said no. And obviously we couldn't donate his heart because of the cardiac arrest. But we agreed to the other organs, and they said to us on the Tuesday afternoon, they said, right, what we do is we put this information into like a forum. It's kind of like a database, and it will take about 24 hours to see whether any recipients come back. And they put Jamie's organs on there, and I don't know whether it's just because he was so special and so amazing, but within an hour, all 5 of Jamie's organs had been snapped up, basically. People had come and they said, we have 5 recipients now waiting.
But that must have been so hard for you, because to give that gift.
It was, and it was more so because I knew that Jamie's organs had to be okay to be able to donate, and we were talking to the nurses and they were saying we will make sure they're okay. And they then started nursing Jamie's organs. So they said right, we'll give it 24 hours to make sure, because they have to be of really good working order, and obviously they'd had some impact from the lack of oxygen. So they decided they were going to give it until basically 7 o'clock on the Wednesday evening. And I was still saying that I wasn't happy to turn a machine off. I don't know how anybody could flick a switch. I can't, I'm almost in some ways relieved I never had to do that.
Okay.
But we got to the next day, and Jamie's organs were all functioning to 100%, which was unbelievable, like unheard of. So they did the final checks on Jamie on the Wednesday evening, and on the Wednesday afternoon they let us take Jamie's dog in to see him. And everybody had travelled from far and wide, all Jamie's family, and they let everybody in to see him, and we all cuddled him, and we all took it in turns to sleep in the bed with him, and they let me bath him and make sure his hair was where it was meant to be, and they let us choose an outfit. And then they did the final checks on Jamie on the Wednesday afternoon and said, that he hadn't come round, but that they'd put him back on life support for his organs. And that at 10 o'clock they were going to take him down for his organ donation operation. So we got to sit with Mike from the organ team and choose Jamie's music that we wanted playing, and he stayed with Jamie through the operation, because they still, I don't know if you know how it works, but they still treat Jamie as 100% as a living person for that operation, even though they know he's not anymore. And we all said goodbye to him, and we literally just had to sit in the room in the intensive care waiting, and then they put Jamie in all his clothes and everything we'd chosen, and then they brought Jamie back to us on the Thursday morning. But we knew at that point that his organs were gone, and we spent some time with Jamie, although that wasn't Jamie. He wasn't warm by that point, so that was horrific, because in some ways I wished I hadn't seen him at that point, but then in another way, how could I not adore him for what he'd just done? So we all left the hospital in the morning, and as we came out the front of the hospital, there was a helicopter taking off, and that had Jamie's lungs in it, and it was going to Bristol. So we kind of watched him fly. We actually sort of watched his lungs go. And then all the people that got Jamie's organs were all operated on that morning. But obviously the questions were there was just so many questions, because we didn't know what on earth had happened. And I went straight from the hospital to get Jamie's car from his friend's house, and as you can imagine, they were just devastated. Josh, his best friend Josh, and his friend's dad Tim had been doing CPR on Jamie, and already at that point there was all flowers on the ground by the tree at the front of the house where Jamie had sat, and it turned out that he'd been dancing to the Alexa, and he came out and said to his friend that he felt a bit funny. Didn't say he was in pain, didn't clutch his chest, nothing like that. Just said that he felt a bit funny, and he walked out the front of the house and took his phone out of his pocket, which I think was probably to message me and say I don't feel well or something. And he sat down on the ground by the tree, and he just slumped over, and he was gone straight away. And then Josh started doing the CPR straight away, and then, like I say, all the questions started. I managed to get Jamie's car home, and we obviously spoke to his friends. He hadn't been feeling poorly, he'd been absolutely normal. We got home and his pizza was still there, and we knew he'd had something to eat. And
I suppose it's the one saving grace. Like, I know with Deck, we were literally on a drive, and then I turned round and he had gone. And it's almost to know that, I know obviously Jamie hadn't properly gone at that point, but the fact that he wouldn't have been aware of what was going on,
there was no pain,
is it's like it is, isn't it? It's that one saving grace that if you have to go,
to just
be so unaware of it.
Yeah. And
it is just that one kind of like, there's no saving grace, there's no silver lining.
But I said to Nathan's mum, because Jamie hated being on his own. He was always had to be with me or with his dad or his brother, and he hated being on his own. And I said to Julie, he wasn't on his own, was he? And she said, no, he wasn't on his own. I was talking to him in his ear and I was telling him that you were on your way the whole time. And even in the ambulance they said that they were telling him that I was on my way, and that when they got to the hospital his dad was saying to him straight away, your mum's on her way. And then my sister got there, so the whole time there was somebody with him, and the nurses kept saying to us that his hearing would have been the last thing that he lost. So we all talked, and it sounds a bit weird now, but we all sat around his bed, and you've never heard us laugh so much. We were literally going through his dad's Snapchat and the messages that he used to send between Callum, Jamie and his dad, and they just used to send goofy videos of his dad, and it became a bit of a, and we sat there with the nurses and we laughed and laughed, and I'm so pleased in some ways now, because I know the last thing Jamie would have heard was all of us laughing together, and like, he knew he wasn't on his own, and we all just talked to him the whole time. And I'm so grateful to Josh and Tim, because if they hadn't have jumped in and started doing CPR, I would have come back to him already being gone. But I was so grateful that we had that 5 days to be with him, and I can't imagine how I could have ever got over coming back to him already being gone. So but obviously at that point then all the questions started, and everything, it all then becomes like the official thing that you have to go through. And as we was talking about earlier on, we were going through so many horrible stereotypical things.
I was really shocked to hear that people questioned, was he on drugs, was he drunk, you know. So tell me exactly medically what it's called, what happened to Jamie.
So Jamie, we lost Jamie through Sudden Arrhythmic Death Syndrome, which is where Jamie's heart rhythm suddenly changed. Post-mortem, it's very difficult to figure out why, and because Jamie was on life support, it was very difficult to figure out why that rhythm change happened.
But this is a phenomenon that does happen.
And it's actually quite common in young men between the ages of 18 and 24.
It's happened on football pitches, hasn't it?
A lot, and Jamie didn't have any heart conditions, so obviously at that early point we didn't know if there was anything in any of us that could have passed down to him. We knew that Jamie didn't take drugs. And
that's it. I want to say to anyone that's listening to this that they found no alcohol even in his system.
Nothing, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing, which we knew anyway that wasn't who Jamie was as a boy. And they couldn't find anything, but because obviously the coroner's report and everything takes so long to come. But
the fact you had to deal with those
and even anti-vaxxers, like people against the COVID vaccine, they'd gone to where all the flowers were by the tree, and they'd stuck stickers on about how bad we were as parents for letting Jamie have the vaccine. And
it just is beyond belief, and is incredibly disrespectful when they don't know the ins and outs of what actually happened. You know, I know that being a grieving parent is something you won't wish on anybody, and regardless of your views, people need to be kind. And if that means keeping your negative thoughts to yourself, if that's all you can do, then do that, because the most horrendous thing anyone will go through in a lifetime is losing a child, if that happens.
And that's the thing, it wasn't just us. Like, for Jamie's friends, I mean, they'd already been put through the most horrific thing that they were ever going to see, and then they were getting questioned about things, and it was just horrific for them. And I didn't know, and I still to this day don't even know how to comfort them, because I class myself as lucky for not having to go through that, but they will have to live with that forever, and that memory of seeing Jamie like that. And Jamie's friends, they'd been this small group of friends for years. They weren't just people he was hanging out with, these were his best friends, and they'd already been through so much, and yet people could then ask questions and almost interrogate them, which you don't know what that does to them then in future.
And I think that's in society in the UK, in kind of my grief journey, what I've noticed is the way grief is dealt with here is so different. you know, in other countries, no one would dream of saying anything negative. They would want to support you, even if they didn't know all the facts.
But it's almost like as if it's allowed here.
Yes, and it shouldn't be, because it makes grieving so much harder.
Yeah, well, and it puts you in a path that you don't want to do. So we all agreed as a family that we didn't have any reason to announce what had happened to Jamie anywhere.
Because why should you have to?
We didn't need to put it on any form of social media or. It was something that Jamie didn't like. Things like death announcements and stuff. We just didn't like stuff like that. But because of his friends being interrogated and us being interrogated and people thinking it was okay to decide what had happened to Jamie without knowing, it meant we had to. It meant we had to say Jamie had suffered a cardiac arrest, and it meant we had to tell strangers, which I don't think any family or any parent should ever have to do.
No,
but to protect his friends and to protect all of us and to protect Jamie, we then had to tell people that didn't even know him, and you almost felt like you were sort of ticking a box, which you shouldn't have to do.
No, you should be looked after during that time. But you've done something incredible since then. So not only did Jamie donate 5 of his organs, so there is 5 people living and breathing down to your son. There's going to be countless amount of people that are also saved because of our Jay's Foundation.
So 3 weeks after Jamie's organ donation operation, we call it, we got a letter from the organ donor team that gave us the information about who had received Jamie's organs. There was 4 adults. The double lungs went to a gentleman in his 40s who'd been on the register for a long time, and then there was a teenage boy, there was a lady in her 30s, and then there was another lady, I think she was in her late 20s, and then there was a emergency life-saving partial liver transplant for an 8-month-old baby girl.
Oh gosh.
And when we received that letter, it was, people say, oh, it must have been of comfort. It wasn't a comfort, but it was a crikey, like he chose that those people got that phone call that night, and then they started going through the opposite to what we were going through. And we had a conversation, my other son Callum, we'd had a conversation about, you know, well, if he's already started saving lives by doing that, wouldn't it be great if we could get some defibrillators out there so that we could do the same?
So you've not just got one amazing son, you've got 2 by the sounds of it.
Yeah, both are, and Jamie was very much like Callum. Everything that Jamie learnt was from Callum, really. He wanted to be like Callum. So, and Callum is also the most selfless person you could ever meet. They were very alike. But after we'd lost Jamie, all the questions started coming up, and we realised that there had been a catastrophic ambulance delay, and that the police had gone to Jamie, and that they didn't have a defibrillator, and that the local defibrillator, which happened to be in the boys' school, the school that the boys had gone to, was locked inside the building. So even though they knew there was one there, they couldn't get to it. So Callum said to me, well, we'll raise money at the funeral and we'll get the defibrillator put outside so this never happens to another family.
Because the key thing with a defibrillator is the sooner it's used, the more likelihood of getting the heart restarted, oxygen going to the organs. And am I right in saying it was over 19 minutes, did you say?
Yeah, so even though there was great CPR going on without defibrillation, and the paramedics weren't at Jamie's side till 19 and a half minutes. And they managed to get Jamie's heart beating again at about 24 minutes.
Yeah, that's a long
but
time
it's too long
to be without oxygen.
Anything over 10 minutes, it decreases the chances hugely. But the police were first on the scene at 12 minutes. But sadly just didn't have the defibrillator. So those conversations started, and I said to Callum, we're never going to raise enough money for a cabinet at the funeral. So we started a Just Giving page on the 26th of January, and by the next morning there was £3,700 on there.
How much is a defibrillator?
So for a defib and a cabinet was about £1,200 when we started. So that just kind of made us think, well, we can do 3.
Wow.
We could get 3. And it was the last thing that we wanted to think about at that time. We were still planning Jamie's funeral. We had to wait a very long time because Jamie's heart had been sent away to a specialist pathologist in London. And we wanted for Jamie his funeral to wait until his heart was back in where it was meant to be.
Yeah.
So we weren't thinking about the just give him, but it became very clear, and I think that was the moment that we realised that Jamie was going to save lots of lives, that this wasn't the end for Jamie. And in my head, I remember saying to someone, I don't want Jamie to be that lad that died at New Year. You know, you hear things and you read things and you hear people go, oh, you remember that lad that died at New Year? And I never wanted him to be that. He was always meant to be way more than that. And that kind of stuck in my head a little bit. And RJ started, everybody used to call Jamie Jay except for me. I was the only one that called him Jamie, but everyone used to refer to him as RJ. And so we decided that it would become RJ Foundation.
So when did that become established?
So we carried on the raising money, and his just giving went up to over £20,000 very quickly. We installed our first 3 defibrillators in the March. So Jamie's funeral was on the 22nd of February, and we raised a load more money at that. And then on I think it was second week of March 2022, we put our first 3 defibrillators in.
And where were they?
So that was at Jamie's College, the local pub, Steam Turbine, and Edmonton's Electrical, who had given us all the electric equipment that we needed to be able to install the cabinets. And the local electrician, it was Lewis, Top Marks Electrical, who had installed our first ones for us. And then in June, by the June we'd installed 22. And then in the October 2022 we became an official charity where we were registered, and it just went from there. So
how many currently?
So as of today is 245.
Wow.
So 245, but along the way it's kind of, so Snap Fitness got in touch with us. Callum wanted to go back to the gym, and I wouldn't let him go back to the gym unless there was a defib there. So he got talking to the people at Snap Fitness. They were really interested in the story and really wanted to work with Callum. So we started a partnership with them, and now you can't have a Snap Fitness without one of our J's defibrillators. So there's 59 in them on top of our other 245.
This is incredible.
And then we've got 55 which are pitch side at grassroots clubs all around our town. We put them in vehicles, and we are so close to getting them put in Warwickshire police vehicles. That's something that we've been campaigning for a long time, so that people like the police officer that went to Jamie are not in a position where they don't have what they need to help. Had that policeman just had that defibrillator in his car, we feel that Jamie would probably be sitting here today. But as I've said to you, we don't blame anybody. It's nobody's fault what happened. We just want to make sure that it doesn't happen to other people, and if that we can save even 1, 2, 3 minutes by having a defib in a car that's first on the scene, that could be the difference between life and death. So
it really is. And if anyone's listening to this that is touched by your story, and I can't see anyone listening to this and not being, it's RJ Foundation. That's where people can donate. If they want to buy one, they're 1,200.
We can get them for about 1,170 now, so our costs have come down.
What an amazing thing to maybe leave in your will or donate, so that someone can actually say, I bought that one. I want to ask about your logo.
So you can see it on the van.
I can. I don't know if you can see through, but I've parked with them.
So Jamie was a fisherman. So Jamie used to love fishing. So we have the 2 fish. And then whenever Jamie used to text me, he would always put a blue heart on the end of the message, because he used to say, well, I wouldn't send you a red heart because I'll save that for girls, even though Jamie never had a girlfriend. So we made the blue heart, and then Jamie's favourite colour was blue. He was a Chelsea fan. So his favourite colour was blue, even though he always wore black. And we don't like, even though at Jamie's funeral we asked everybody to wear black hoodies, and we all did, but we try not to make anything about his foundation negative. Everything has to be positive about Jamie's foundation, because he was the most positive person on the planet. So it's all blue, it's all purples, and I just designed that myself.
I love it. I thought they were sharks, and I'm obsessed with marine life. So I absolutely
fishing.
love that.
Jamie used to go fishing a lot with his brother and his dad and his stepdad, and we have fishing competitions every year, and that's part of the fundraising and stuff. And it's something that he loved to do, and that's special to us because it was just his hobby. Even though he was a fair weather fisherman, he wouldn't go in the rain. But I think because of the whole blue heart thing, and people have kind of jumped on that. So at Christmases and Jamie's birthday, and I get so many blue hearts sent to me, especially by mums, other mums that just see the blue heart means a lot to me. And the whole of his foundation is based around blue hearts. And we have his headstone, and on his headstone is carved a blue heart with a wolf, because Jamie used to love wolves as well. But yeah, I think with regard to the whole organ donation thing, at Christmas and New Year and birthdays and that horrific day we've got coming up, Mother's Day, I really try and focus on that little girl who got that life-saving liver transplant, because I think that family had just been through what they thought was going to be her one and only Christmas, and that she wasn't going to be there. But now at Christmas they wake up to her, whereas it's most horrific time for us. We hate Christmas now, even though Jamie loved it. But I always think about that little girl in the mornings and on Christmas morning, and I think she's getting up, opening her presents, and her mum and dad wouldn't have had a clue they were ever going to have that with her. And that just makes me feel like what an amazing boy Jamie was, to have had that
that insight
and compassion for people, to think, I'm not going to need these organs, let somebody else live.
And talking about compassion, if anyone is listening to this who has a best friend or someone that has lost a child and they want to support them, what advice would you give on trying to support a parent who has lost a child?
I feel like, I can only talk as mum, same as you, but I feel like I never wanted for people to avoid talking about Jamie. People have crossed the road so as not to speak to me.
I know that one.
And they've avoided having to be face to face with me. But I love talking about Jamie, and the people that come to me or send me a message saying, I hope you don't mind me contacting you, but what a beautiful boy Jamie is. And I never talk about Jamie as if he's not here anymore. Jamie is and not was. And he is still out there changing things. We heard last week that Jamie's defibrillators have saved their 14th life now. So to me, he's still out there. So my advice would always be, don't jump to a conclusion. Always ask the question first. And I talked to you about my mask. So I do these things where I'm working for Jamie and I'm campaigning for Jamie and we're trying to get changes for Jamie, and I have to put this mask on, but at the end of the day I wipe the makeup off. My hair's a mess, even if I can be bothered to wash my hair, but I'm still the same person. I am just a grieving mum, and I always will be. Thing,
isn't it? It doesn't matter what people on the outside might see. Your heart has still got this massive hole in it.
I always say my heart went with Jamie, and he will give it back to me when I see him again. I must have something of a heart there, because my whole world now is Callum, and my husband, and obviously my family and Jamie's family. But I think when you lose a child, something disappears from inside you and it never comes back. That I think a light goes out, and you know, I have to be strong for Callum and my family, and you know, but there is no strength there really. I sometimes get to the evening and I'm that exhausted just from trying to keep going.
It's so overwhelming and exhausting, isn't it? And I sincerely wish this podcast wasn't a thing. I wish I'd never met you, because I wish we weren't part of the Grieving Parent Club that no one would ever want to be a part of. But I have really enjoyed hearing about RJ, and not the boy that died on New Year's Eve, but Jamie. His
and
love
how
for
much
animals.
He had in common with death. I mean, it's crazy really when you meet another mum that's going through something so horrific, but then when you start talking you realise that your boys seem to align somewhere. And I was saying, I always think that Jamie would be wherever he is amongst the stars, and would probably find somebody like Dec that had similar passions and hobbies, and because Jamie just loved to talk, and he would talk to people, and especially if it was a shared hobby. So I have this in my head now that he does meet up with other people his age, even though he's probably there with his nan, but he would be with other people his age, and he'll be chatting away, and he'll be sharing his geeky facts with everybody.
And also giving us strength on a daily basis to bear the unbearable, basically.
There must be something holding me up. You must feel the same, because if he's not there holding me up, I have no clue what is.
No. Well, I really do appreciate you telling me his story, your story, and what an incredible legacy that is continuing in Jamie's name. So thank you so much. He couldn't have been more amazing when he was here, but to carry on being so amazing is everything to us. And I will forever make sure that his legacy continues, and hopefully less and less people will have to go through what we've done. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you so much for listening. Next Wednesday, I will be joined by Shelley, who on October the 13th, 2023, received the knock on the door, which is every parent's worst nightmare. 2 police officers telling her that her 20-year-old son had been in a fatal car accident. Shelley tells me how she's keeping Luke's legacy alive with the Japanese car scene, which was his main passion. This podcast is in honour of my son Declan, and for anyone out there who's lost someone they love, I see you, I feel you, I hear you, and I hope in some small way this helps you feel a little less alone. Keep your heart safe until next time. And don't forget to follow or subscribe. Your support helps keep this podcast going.